Welcome to the Y2Believe podcast. We have the privilege of speaking with Olivia Amadeus
Yes.
today.
Yes.
She's had a unique experience in the New Age movement and a unique encounter with Jesus and the Christian God. So we're going to discuss her experiences, her life, and what's happened since she's gone from New Age to Christianity, and how that's impacted her life, and how that even occurred. So, and then at the end, we're going to discuss a few things, a few kind of closing thoughts on what she thinks of the New Age movement now that she has become a believer. So, welcome,
Thank
Olivia.
you. Thank you. I'm very, very excited to be here. Very excited to speak.
Yeah. Well, great.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have told me about this encounter that you've had with Jesus recently, but why don't we start with you kind of sharing your story, starting from your childhood? What was your childhood like?
So I grew up as part of the Roman Catholic Church. Ever since I was little, I was baptized as a baby, and like we always went to church on Sundays. I sang in the choir at church. I was pretty decently involved, and like would go to Sunday school classes and things like that. But it was something that was felt sort of distant to me. I compare it to almost like being like almost like Santa Claus. It felt like, and there was no like click of like this is God and this is, it just felt like responsibility more or less. And when I reached about the age of 10, my family collectively sort of turned their back on the Roman Catholic Church, and then started to embrace more like New Age spiritual movement sort of stuff. It really started with going to like crystal shops and finding like the little rocks, and then they would print out papers with their meaning, and then that expanded on into using like sage, and then getting into like meditation and other things like that. But my family as a collective kind of embraced that sort of, affirmations, manifestations, thinking about like the universe as, the energetic experience, and like you are the creator of your own reality is sort of the basis of it.
So, did your family make a conscious decision to leave Roman Catholicism into this kind of New Age thinking, or was it a gradual progression that it was like, yeah, we're Catholic, but we're going to maybe test out some of this crystal?
Yeah, I would say it was more gradual, because it wasn't like we're like all of a sudden there was a switch of like, oh, we're goodbye Roman Catholic Church, we're gonna go do this. It was just kind of like, and I think too, New Age spirituality over the last like 10 years became extremely trendy, and it really infiltrated like the current media. And so I think the overexposure to New Age spirituality kind of encouraged that a little bit more. I think it was more like we were a bit lost, like we weren't going to church anymore. I moved from Pennsylvania to Florida when I was 13, and that's really when it stopped, because the church that I grew up going to, we left, and we never found another church here. And then it just we kind of went with the masses as far as like the New Age spirituality.
Yeah, and you've talked to me about this off camera, but it seemed like your mom was a major mover
Yeah,
in
no,
this direction and had a lot of influence in your life.
definitely.
What did that look like, the influence of your mom
Mhm.
into the New Age movement? I mean, you were fairly young at the time.
Mhm.
Did you have a conscious idea of, I'm no longer believing in this God, I'm
Mhm.
now moving into this other view of spirituality
Mhm.
with my mom? Is that,
Mm,
how
well,
did that?
it was kind of something her and I like did together.
Mm,
And I definitely, I was very curious about it as well. It wasn't like I was like forced into it. It was more like I was lost without having been going to church.
yeah.
And I remember like the moment I think it switched, we passed a crystal shop. We drove by the Mystical Moon where I used to work. And I was like, I have to go there. And she was like, okay, let's go. And it was kind of something that we went into together. And I was very strong in it also in the beginning too, to where I feel like I kind of led her into it more,
Yeah.
honestly.
Okay.
And as time went, we kind of switched roles where she started to really embrace. She was more on the like manifestation side of things, because she was very focused on opening up her business, and getting that moving. So I think like manifesting money, manifesting wealth, manifesting happiness, manifesting success. That's kind of where a lot of her focus was. Whereas I was very interested in the more mystical sides of it, like the meditation crystals, ascending consciousness, opening up into different dimensions,
Yeah.
things like that.
Where, I mean, you were clearly like searching for meaning in this time of your life.
Mhm.
So where were you finding meaning
Mm.
during this time? If was it in the crystals? Was it in this idea of manifestation? Where were you gaining this positive element that was like, yes, this is true. I need to pursue this.
It was a constant search.
Yeah.
So it was being sent on a journey, and it was like almost a false promise of like you're going to find something here. Keep looking, keep going deeper, keep buying more
Mm,
crystals, spending more money, seeing more tarot card readers. I started seeing a tarot card reader when I was about 14, and I think that played a major factor. And I saw the same tarot card reader from the time I was 14 until I was 22, which I am now. Which
wow.
then that was the last time I saw her was right before my salvation, and looking back, majority of things she told me always led me down a path of like pain and confusion. And this is a point that I had made to you before, is that I realized New Age spirituality is this constant balance of dark and light, dark and light. They emphasize like duality, the duality of reality, and that you have to go into the darkness to find the light, and this,
Mm,
that, and the other. To a certain degree, I agree with that in a way of like, you find more joy in life when you've experienced sorrow, but I feel like it kind of cuts off there, as opposed to like my biggest realization to one of them is like when walking with Jesus, you're just simply walking in the light. You don't have to wander back into the
mm.
darkness again.
Yeah, yeah, wow.
Mhm.
So this was during high school that all this
Mhm.
is happening. You're beginning to
Mhm.
explore these new age ideas. You're
Mhm.
beginning to buy the crystals and go to the tarot
Mhm.
card readers and learn
Mhm.
about the duality of reality and all
Mhm.
of these things.
Mhm.
Moving from high school forward, how did that progress? How did your thinking progress?
Mhm.
And what was your buy-in like in the new age movement?
It really became strong for me when I was in college. I studied. I had a degree. I have a degree in psychology and neuroscience, but then I took a minor in a program called integrated studies. And a lot of the classes were really great. A lot of them were more like on mindfulness and like taking care of the mind and the spirit and other things. But then I took some classes about like shamanism and yogic practice, and that were very deep into not new age, but more it was like the Eastern philosophy, but that the Eastern philosophy has really been taken into the New Age movement as well. Um,
In what way? In what way has the Eastern philosophy been adopted in?
I feel like because like shamanism, it's a very old practice, and shamanism is found all over the world, and then also like Buddhism and other things like that. The concepts and ideas are kind of taken and utilized as like little sayings, and then
Mm.
also like a lot of people in the New Age spiritual movement like to call themselves shaman. Like I'm a shaman, I'm a witch, or other things like that. Archetypes. It's very archetypal.
Did you
Um,
describe yourself in that way as a
Certainly.
shaman or a witch or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, no, definitely. I identified under a lot of those kinds of umbrellas of things, especially too. I started getting like Reiki attunements. I don't know if you and I have actually talked
Can
about
you explain
this.
a little bit about what a
Yeah,
Reiki attunement
yeah,
is? I
yeah.
have no idea. I've never done one.
Yeah,
So
no,
I,
that's
I don't
okay.
know.
So Reiki attunement is there's difference between Reiki attunement and Reiki healing. When you are attuned to Reiki, you're a Reiki healer. So you provide healing for other people. And it's funny because it's like how Jesus touches people and they're healed. That's kind of the concept. No human being is supposed to be able to do that. It's only supposed to be Jesus, the Son of God. But Reiki is an old practice that was found in Japan, like 100 something years ago.
Mm.
There's this whole story about it. But essentially it was brought over to America, and people would pay the first Reiki attunement. Somebody paid $10,000 for,
Wow.
because you were promised to be able to. It's basically taking universal light energy into your body and being a conduit for putting that energy into another person. And it's all based on like speeding up energy particles in the body to remove like emotional debris or disease.
Mm.
And I mean, within doing the Reiki practice, I was practicing Reiki for like 2 years. And I did provide healing for people, but it was a momentary second of relief. Um, that kind of was like it really, what I believe now is it leads people deeper into deception.
Mm.
And the
What
main
did you believe then, if I can interrupt?
That's okay, no, please.
I'm very curious.
Yeah.
What did you believe then when you were Reiki healing,
Mm-hmm.
when you were a Reiki healer?
Mm-hmm.
What was your perception of yourself in that?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on
Oh,
that.
great.
It really like fuels that whole concept of like you are your own God.
Mm.
And you can heal yourself, you can heal others. And it definitely like boosted my ego quite a bit of like, I can provide this healing for people. I'm like so mystical and magical and special and great and blah 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 blah. But if I look back on the healing that I provided, like I remember a specific time, my grandma, she has like fibromyalgia and a lot of like pain in her body. And so I came, and all you do is you take your hands and you put them on the person. And I remember I would feel like my hands get very hot, and like you share the energy and other things like that. And she was like, Olivia, you healed me. That's so magical. Blah blah blah. But like she woke up the next morning, she was still in pain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's such a deception. It's so misleading. It's very interesting. Yeah.
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 So in college, you're engaging in these New Age practices. You're studying it. You're taking college classes in this. During that time, did you encounter Christianity at all in your adult years, in these college years? What was your interaction like while you were a New Age witch, I guess, right? That's how you describe yourself, a New Age witch?
I feel like so the term witch is funny. I did because it has so much negative connotation. I would use the word alchemist.
Okay, alchemist, the New Age alchemist.
Yeah, I'd call myself an alchemist. An alchemist is basically taking energy, molding it, and making it different. I thought I was taking bad things and turning them into good, putting too much power into myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I definitely had encounters with Christianity here and there. I was always very curious and very open. So like I'm taking it back just a little bit, but I used to be part of an organization when I was in middle school and early high school called Young Life. It's like a Christian organization where they like send kids to camp and things like that. And so I had exposure there. But it was more of a social thing for me because all of my friends, we would all get to go to summer camp and things like that and like meet up for club on Tuesdays. And they would talk a little about Jesus, but they didn't really they weren't saving people. You know what I mean? And then, would have friends that were Christian and I would say, hey, I want to go to a Bible study with you. And I'd go to the Bible study, but then I'd ask, I remember this specific one I had. I told the two girls I was sitting with, I was like, I don't believe in the devil because if you believe in the devil, you're giving him power and then he's going to affect your life. So I'd just rather say the devil's not real. And they looked at me and they said, Olivia, that's the biggest deception that you can have. And at that time, I sort of shut down when they said that and I let it go over my head. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I didn't know what it really meant. You know what I mean? I didn't know how serious it was. I wasn't taking it so serious. But then when I was at FGCU and I was on the college campuses, I saw Michael Bossman sitting, and he's leader of the Y2B ministry.
Yeah.
And I'd see him sitting on campus with a sign that says, "Is God real?" And that sparked my curiosity, of course, because I was in a place with the New Age spirituality where it's such an open practice, to where they really encourage people to like take and pick and choose pieces of like what you want from different religions and different things like that. There's this concept of Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
That's very big in New Age spirituality, and it's basically like the new coming of Jesus is Jesus coming in all of us, as if like Jesus doesn't come back as like a singular person, like Son of God, like how he did. But essentially we're all Jesus, we're all gods, and that really fuels that concept of like you're your own God even more. But when I would sit with Michael, we would have interesting conversations. I was trying to be convinced. I was like,
every time anybody sits with Michael, they have an interesting conversation.
It wasn't so much like, okay, let's talk about the Bible, but I would always, Michael would walk me through like thought experiences of reality. I think where I struggled the most with being in the New Age is that I used to believe you could create your own reality. That's like a big concept within it. There's only one reality, you know what I mean? And I think Michael was trying to help me realize that, but I was just kind of like not there. I was like, there's so many things, there's so much. So I wanted to be a believer of everything. I think that's where I was mistaken too, because I wanted to be believing and accepting of all things that have been created in humanity. I was like, well, if we're all talking about the same thing, blah, 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 but really not.
Yeah. It's almost like if you end up believing in everything, you end up believing in nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've had a few encounters then in these years with various Christians, with Michael on the campus and with Young Life as a ministry, and it didn't seem to change your mind at the time. It was like they're pulling you towards something almost, but you were resistant to that pull. What is it then? Where did you finally encounter Jesus? And what was that like? What was the process to get from there, from being resistant, being like, no, I am my own God, I am this New Age alchemist, to I'm a follower of Jesus? How did that happen?
So I mean, post college, I kind of kept that whole New Age spiritual thing up. I actually got very deep in the community of like teaching. I was holding meditation spaces, group Reiki healings, other things like that, and still continuing to go to my psychic. And I got to a point where the last year of my life leading up to my salvation was a year of deep, deep, deep pain, lots of mistakes, lots of poor decisions, lots of misguidance. And it got me to a point where I was completely broken. A lot of things in my life went south. I was not able to like fully show up for my job. I was having a hard time like making decisions with that, which my job is very important to me. I was in a horrible, really bad relationship, which the decision to be there was no good. And then it's funny because I'd go to the tarot card reader and I'd ask her over and over again questions about, oh, is this a good situation for me to be in, blah, blah, blah. And she would just lead me deeper and deeper into it until, things went really bad there, which really broke me. Crashed my car, all kinds of terrible things happened. And then, Malachi, that
Well,
was,
they don't know about
yeah,
Malachi. If you
yeah,
want to, you can share
yeah,
briefly kind of
yeah.
how you met Malachi and what
Mm-hmm,
that meant, and then
mm-hmm,
I know it's a part of your story,
yeah.
how that eventually
Mm-hmm.
kind of led to your salvation.
Yeah, no, that's a massive key point, I think.
Mhm.
So about 2 years ago, in 2021, the end of 2021 and into 2022, I met Malachi, your brother.
Mhm.
Your
My
little,
my my younger brother
yeah,
Malachi.
yes. And we got into a romantic relationship very quickly, and rather quickly he proposed to me. So we were engaged and other things like that. And, it was we were both, me and Malachi. Malachi came from a very strong Christian family, but Malachi was a little bit rebellious with his faith and made some decisions as far as turning his back on Christianity and really seeking. He was also very curious, and in my opinion, he was seeking some dark things,
Mhm.
into where he saw me as being more light,
Mhm.
because he was dealing with like lots of demonic attacks and other things like that. And me, I even told him, I was like, I don't believe in the devil, so if we don't believe in these demons, then we're gonna be fine.
Mhm.
um, so that was probably my closest encounter in the recent years with somebody who knew Christ at one point and then didn't, and then being around your family too. Lots of conversation of Jesus, lots of praying and things like that. But it wasn't really connective with me. It didn't really click in my heart or anything like that. I was just kind of like, okay, this is cool. This is like a cool part of like life and people's faith and other things. But I was more of an observer instead of a believer and a
Right.
participator. And mine and Malachi's relationship went for 6 months, and something I just think I'm truly, I think it was like a part of demonic oppression where I made the decision to leave the relationship quite suddenly. We were in the midst of planning a wedding, and we were quite happy together. And something kind of clicked where we weren't able to like emotionally handle each other. We didn't have God in the relationship.
Yeah.
One thing I've realized too is like seeking a godly relationship is extremely important, where you're both chasing after God together.
Sure.
And Malachi and I weren't doing that.
Mhm.
Your mother tried to get us to go to Christian marriage counseling. And we were just kind of like, we got it. We can figure it out ourselves.
Yeah.
But we kind of made the decision, or I more made the decision to leave the relationship. And
And
yeah,
if I can
that's
interrupt
okay.
there,
That's okay.
all of this is happening while you're still in college.
Yeah, so
Is
I was
that
still,
right?
yeah, well, I was still in
Okay,
college.
so this
This was
is
2022.
still doing the New Age
Yeah,
alchemists.
I was still all very strong in
Okay.
that. Even Malachi came to school and watched me teach about Reiki.
Yeah.
It was funny, but I essentially at that point I went very deep into it after leaving the relationship with Malachi, because I was really trying to fill that void of having been, I was engaged, we were very deeply involved with each other, other things like that. It was painful, but I really shut my heart down. That was a huge part of ending the relationship with Malachi. I was like completely disconnected from my heart. I was working 80 hours a week, doing all kinds of stuff like that to distract myself and make myself feel better. And that's kind of where the year and a half of pain started, where then I was making poor decisions as far as like just not valuing myself and allowing myself to go on dates with guys who didn't deserve me, and just partying and other things like that just really started to be very self-destructive. And I really was never like that before. Even in my younger years in high school, college, never drank or partied, and I always had like a nice steady boyfriend, things like that. But I was really just kind of like, to heck with it. Like I'm just
Yeah.
here. I'm just existing. Let's just experience whatever. Not valuing my heart, my mind, my life, and was very
Mhm.
disconnected from myself. Um, and following through with all of that, getting to the point where I was in absolute deep pain. I was already in a lot of pain. I was very much struggling, and then Malachi passed,
Mhm.
which is very difficult. It
Yeah.
really slapped me across the face. It
Mhm.
really did. It broke my heart, because in that moment where I was at, I was in so much pain. I was so upset. And then somebody who I deeply cared about, somebody I had loved, somebody that I was romantically involved with, just is gone, poof, disappears. It broke my heart. It truly, truly did.
Yeah.
And I want to share about how I'm seeing him that night.
Yeah. So Malachi died in a motorcycle accident
Mhm.
November 8th, 2023.
Mhm.
And so this is that evening.
Yeah. Yeah, so the evening, I didn't find out about Malachi's passing until 24 hours after the fact on November 9th that night. I found out. But on November 8th, I was walking around downtown, and this was 2 hours after his passing about. And something was drawing my
About
head.
10 p.m.
Yeah, it was about 10 p.m. Something was drawing my head upwards. Just really had the urge to look up onto the rooftop of this like little rooftop club that Malachi used to like dancing at. But I was looking up, and lo and behold, I see Malachi Parker. I'm looking up. I was like, oh, that's Malachi. And he's wearing like the outfit. Honestly, he was wearing the outfit of when he took me over to Sanibel for Valentine's Day. And so it's cool how he showed up to me in the way like that I knew him best. The time that we spent together that was very special. But I'm like, oh, that's Malachi. And even so, I see like his shape, his person, his form, and then he shouts down from the top of the rooftop, "Good morning." Very Malachi, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But I was like, huh, that's definitely Malachi Parker. And I walked away from that experience that night. I told multiple friends, I was like, oh, I saw Malachi tonight. Called my mom, oh, I saw Malachi tonight. I had such a strong urge to even turn back around. And I had a friend with me too. My friend saw the whole thing. I asked her later, I was like, did you see that? And she's like, yes. And I had such a strong urge to turn around and go to the top of that rooftop and go find him. And even that night, I was got a Snapchat notification from Ian. And Ian is Malachi's best friend, and he's typing. And I promise you, I really thought that Ian was typing because he was up there with him, and he was like, "Oh, we saw you tonight." No, he was typing to tell me, which he ended up not sending the message, which was probably for the best because I was driving when he was typing that message. But coming to terms with that, I mean, hearing of Malachi's passing was the first time I had ever been brought to my knees. It was an extremely humbling and painful experience.
And you found out the next day.
I found out the next day from Ian, and
so there's no way that could have been a grief hallucination.
No,
or something.
no way.
You had no idea.
No way it could have been a grief hallucination. I believed I saw this man in the flesh. I really did, and I was actually like, I had messages typed out to him that I didn't know how to send, ready to reach out to him, but I couldn't. So it was really a mind blowing thing, and I think that was, I spoke to Michael about it, and he kind of explained it to me as like that was sort of like an angelic apparition, like God sent an angel to me to kind of let me know, like, hey, I think it's funny that Malachi said good morning. It's a very loaded phrase at this point now, because good morning, like good morning, wake up, welcome to your new life, good morning, wishing me good luck with my mourning and grief. Also, it's very him, very his personality. But once finding out of the passing, I was completely broken. Like so brokenhearted. My mind was broken. Everything. I really thought that I wasn't going to be able to make it. Like I love Southwest Florida. I love my life. I love my job. I love my family. I love my home. Never once would I ever think about leaving. But I was really about ready my plan was the day after the memorial, I was quitting my job, packing my things up, and I was gone. I was going to go somewhere, like go live on a commune somewhere or something like that, something kooky crazy, But bring us 2 weeks later from finding out, about a week and a half or so, because it was the 8th, and then the memorial was the 20th.
Yeah, me and my wife came down that week, and then we saw you at the memorial. That was the first time that we'd seen you since you guys had broken up.
Yeah.
Was that evening.
Yes.
So what happened that evening?
Yeah. So something, on my way to the memorial, I had the worst panic attack of my whole life. I honestly think it was the demonic oppression leaving me and the demons leaving me. But like couldn't breathe. I was sweating. My heart was beating so fast. It was also the reality hitting me of where I was going. I was having a really hard time. I was like ready about to explode. Something was already stirring inside of me at that point. And I really feel that it's funny because for some people, salvation is a cognitive choice where they're like, I need Jesus, I need to go seek. But for me, I really feel that it was the Holy Spirit coming into me and pulling my heart and saying, Olivia, you're going to ruin your life if you don't do this. It is time to meet Jesus. Like, we are giving you no choice, girl. Like, let's go. So I sat there with through the memorial. I had friends with me to kind of like keep me calm. And I was listening to the sermon that you were giving. And at the end of it, you said, if any of you guys want to meet Jesus tonight, come and meet me at the end of the church. And even then, it just went over my head. I was like, okay, Isaiah, like, I know about Jesus. Like, I've heard of him, you know.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it meant to know Jesus. I didn't know that it's a state of being that you truly can enter, you know what I'm saying? And so even then, over my head, I was paying my respects to the family, seeing your parents and your siblings. And then when it got to the point where I saw Lydia, I would talk
That's
to
my
her.
wife. Lydia is my wife.
Lydia is Isaiah's wife. When it got to the point of seeing Lydia, I had, you know, I think we exchanged like only a few sentences. I think she saw how broken I was and how in pain I was from what I had told her. Just, you know, absolute devastation. And she looked at me, she said, Olivia, you have to speak to Isaiah tonight. I want you to speak to Isaiah. And of course, I was planning on coming to talk to you to pay my respects and things like that. And I said, you know, Lydia, he's busy saving people right now. I'm going to go wait at that end of the church and I'll wait till he's done. I'll wait till he's done. And I went to go walk over and sit with Ian and Kevin and all of his friends. And but then I passed you and you turned from the conversation you were having with open arms, and almost I feel like I got completely sucked in and I couldn't avoid. Isaiah cornered me.
It was the Holy Spirit.
It was the
That's
Holy
what's
Spirit.
happening.
I got cornered.
I can't save a soul.
You know, I was talking to someone the other day and they said, you got arrested by the Holy Spirit.
That's right. That's right.
So I feel like the Holy Spirit
Yeah.
just handcuffed me and they were like, let's go, girl. Like, you're going. And, you know, I gave you a hug, you know, said a couple sentences, and something came over me and I looked at you. I said, Isaiah, I want to know Jesus. She didn't even know what she was saying. I had no idea. Like, it wasn't, I didn't plan on it. I didn't anticipate it. I wasn't like in this place of like, you know, I want to know Jesus or anything like that. I just looked at you. The Holy Spirit just shined through you in that moment. You know what I mean? I really felt drawn in that way. And I said, Isaiah, I want to know Jesus. And you said, you're going to be a changed woman after this, Olivia. Are you sure? Are you sure about this? You know, you made me think about it. And you questioning me, it was funny because when you questioned me, my ego stirred a little bit and was like, well, am I sure? But then like I couldn't help myself. I was like, no, I need to know. I need to know what y'all are on. I need to know this Jesus guy. Like at this point, and you know, a lot of it too, like I was still within the new age in that moment. And I was like, well, I'm still seeking. I'm still curious. So I'm going to continue seeking. Mm-hmm. And the new age doesn't necessarily cancel out Jesus. It's like I mentioned, the Christ consciousness and things like that. It's not like they're totally like anti, you know, Bible, anti-Jesus, but they like to pick and choose, and like it's not really about fully having a relationship with the Lord. Mm-hmm. You know, but we sat down with you and Lydia and said, I don't even remember the prayer that you had me say, because in that moment I was so out of it and so broken, but you know, said the prayer of salvation, claiming the Lord as my Savior, releasing all of my prior beliefs. And I remember after the prayer, I looked at you guys and said, something clicked. I felt a click, a literal click in my heart, as if someone plugged something in. And then I had this smile across my face. I could not stop smiling. I walked out into the lobby of the church to see Ian and Kevin. I said, your girl just got saved. It was so exciting, even though I didn't understand what it meant. And then continuing on to go home that night, I was a medical marijuana patient from the time I was 18. And smoking weed pretty much every single day of my life. I was very, very dependent on it. I mean, I utilized it constantly, whether, you know, just always. Like, and it wasn't even like actually getting high. I was just, my body was so acclimated to having it that I just needed it. I was completely, like, I had a complete aversion to it when I got to my house that night. Usually my routine is I'd go in my room, I'd pick up my bong, put it on the windowsill, and I'd smoke. And I looked at it and I was like, I don't want anything to do with that.
Wow.
Not interested.
Wow. There was
whatsoever.
Just no desire.
No desire.
Remained.
The desire.
Yeah, I remember right after you gave your life just in that church, you said something has changed.
Yeah.
I feel a real change just happened.
Yeah.
And so immediately you went home and there was no longer this desire.
No, that was the first thing that disappeared. And I was like, what's going on? That was crazy. You know, and then I went to bed that night and I woke up the next morning, and in my brokenness, I was so broken. Like, I could not think straight. I could not see straight. I was in so much pain. Like, I woke up that morning and I felt that my mind was finally clear and my heart felt light and my eyes were wiped clean. And I came to work and I had the most productive day that I had had the whole time that I had been working for the company that I worked for. I was like, wow, I'm actually getting things done. I can actually make decisions. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. The Lord gave me discernment right away. That was a major thing for me. was throughout that first day after my salvation, I tried to preach my old word. I tried to talk about the new age, and I couldn't. Like, the words weren't coming out of my mouth anymore.
Why do you think that was?
It was just surrender. It was surrender to the Holy Spirit. I gave my life to the Lord, and like I was silenced. Like, I could not speak it anymore. I
Wow.
didn't believe it was true. I think it's because the truth of the Lord really came over me, and how true that Christianity truly, truly, truly is. I was like, I finally found a truth. I
Yeah.
finally found it.
I want to touch on that
Mhm.
because you've mentioned this, like you found the truth of Christianity
Mhm.
in this experience with Jesus.
Mhm.
What do you mean by the truth of Christianity,
Mm.
especially in contrast with your old notions of truth?
Mm.
Because you shared with me at one point that you used to believe that everybody needed to kind of find their own truth.
Mhm.
They needed to find their own path, and
Mhm.
whether that was finding Christ consciousness or something
Mhm.
else,
Mhm.
that's what they needed to get. But that was
Mhm.
no longer what you believed. You now
Mhm.
believed in this different truth
Mhm.
that was universal.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can you
As a,
explain that?
as a humanity, if we are all fractaled and looking for our own idea of what truth is, if our own idea of what reality is, we remain separate, and we're fighting and we're arguing and other things like that. But within Christ, it's just a singular truth. It's a singular reality.
Mm.
I might not have all the full words to describe that, because it really is like a state of being and a feeling that I came into of like, yo, this is the realest thing I've ever seen, I've ever felt. I
Mm.
think it was the removal of the pain for me, because the new age, a lot of
Yeah.
it is about healing your trauma, healing your
Mhm.
subconscious, healing this and that. And you're doing all these things to try and heal, and it really doesn't work. It just confuses you even more. But the way that the Lord came into my life and came into my heart and actually just immediately removed my pain and immediately healed me, to where I was like, okay, I can handle this. I can handle, the healing from the difficult relationships that I had been in and everything I had to face with that, and I can handle the pain of the grief. I can handle, my job and my life, and I'm actually grateful now. This sense of gratitude came over me for my
Mhm.
experiences. And so that's where I think a lot of the truth kicks in, is that in the new age, you're constantly seeking to put the pieces together, put the puzzle together, and make it make sense.
Mhm.
Whereas everything just makes sense with the Lord in your heart.
Mhm.
It,
Yeah.
it's really, really, really
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned something else to me that I thought was really interesting. You said that in your previous idea of New Age, it felt like you had to constantly work
Mhm.
to gain some idea of what
Mhm.
is good or
Mm.
some light, and then
Mhm.
it would vanish very
Mhm.
quickly.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
that was very different in your experience with Jesus.
Mhm.
Can you explain what was
Yeah.
different there?
So within the New Age, I mean, I was studying the New Age deeply for like 10 years. And I was reading, I read countless books. I took college level classes, like watched constant YouTube videos, and it just kind of went in one ear and out the other, to where I was like, okay, this is great information. It was like an info blast. It's just a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of concepts, and you take it all in and you're like, okay, here it is. Within my salvation and bringing myself to the Lord, like I mentioned to you, like the Lord really blessed me with discernment and with the knowledge of Christ. When I was trying to preach my old word, my mind was then filled and replaced with Jesus and who
Wow.
Jesus was. And I hadn't even gone to church yet or read the Bible yet or anything. I remember I got coffee with you and Lydia 2 days later, and Lydia looked at me at one point. She goes, Olivia, I don't know how you know Jesus so well. Like, what is going on? And it really, like, I just knew how to speak about Jesus. I knew, and
Mm.
it's not like I knew everything. I still very much need to go deep into Scripture and to become more biblically accurate and continue to go to church. But it was more like I knew the relationship of Jesus. I knew the love of Jesus.
Mhm.
I knew how much He loved me and how much He loved you and how much He loves everybody, and He loves people that don't even believe
Mhm.
Him. And I knew how to articulate about Him. So, that was kind
Cool.
of where I didn't have to do any work. I didn't have to spend a single penny on Jesus.
Yeah.
In the new age, you have to spend for those Reiki attunements. You spend $100+ on getting the Reiki
Mm.
attunements. To go to a psychic, it's $100+ every time. I did not have to spend a single penny on Jesus. I actually made a penny. Yeah,
Yeah, that's incredible. That's
yeah,
really incredible.
yeah.
Now, this love of Jesus that you experienced,
Mhm,
this kind of sudden change in your
mhm,
heart and your mind. You said your mind has never been clearer,
mm.
and your heart has never been lighter. How is that? a different experience than what you described as love in your New Age
Hmm.
beliefs, because you also believed that you genuinely loved people
Yeah.
in your New Age belief. How is that different? What's
Mhm.
different in this in the
Mhm.
loves?
Mhm. It's selfishness and selflessness. So in the New Age, a lot of the love, there's a lot of like heightened self love, and it's like you can't love anybody else until you love yourself, kind of thing. And so
Mm,
it kind of holds you back to where like I loved people, I knew I cared for people, but I couldn't express my love for people
mm,
efficiently enough. I was so caught up in my own wave of selfishness. I mean, affirmation and manifestation, it's all about I am successful, I am wealthy, I am healthy, happy, beautiful, all of those things. I am. You're not praying to anything, you're not praying to anyone. The Lord is so humbling that when you put your head down, you hang your head down and you open your heart and you pray to the Lord and you say, Lord, I lay this down to you. I surrender to you. I need you to take care of this for me. It is so humbling. And to where, how I act in my human life, to where now I was like a week or so after my salvation, I saw myself doing all of these kind acts and it's not like I don't think I wasn't a kind person before. I think I was a kind person, but I think I was a kind person in my mind. I was just, very self-interested in trying to, make the best life for myself. But when the Lord came into my heart, there was this immediate change of like, now I know how to love on people. Now I know how to provide for the people around me, whether it's someone who works for me, whether it's my family, my friend, or a complete stranger. I can shine the light of the Holy Spirit on them and they will feel something a little bit
mm.
different.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, so I want to, I'm really curious then, what would you say to someone who is still in the New Age movement?
Hmm.
What would you say to yourself even just a few months ago in the New Age movement now that you've experienced this love of Jesus?
Hmm. The biggest thing that I've realized about the New Age movement is that it is utterly selfish. It's utterly, utterly selfish, and it's utterly deceptive. It drives you towards practices and ways of being that really draw you inward to yourself. And you want to, you meditate and you go inward or you ascend beyond and you are reaching towards something that is not necessarily going to help you. It's going to hinder you and hold you back. And surrendering to the Lord is the most freeing experience that you can allow yourself to have. When you surrender to the Lord, you lay your heart down to the Lord, you lay your mind, your life, everything. Jesus, take the wheel. It's a true feeling of freedom and surrender to where I finally felt fully human with finding the Lord in my life. I was no longer chasing after these archetypes of alchemist, witch, warlock, shaman, or trying to become something that I'm not. I am a perfect creation of the Lord. I'm a perfect creation of God, a daughter of the King, and to where you can really truly live in your full heart and you can actually really love for real. Yeah.
Wow. Wow,
Mhm.
it's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful
Yeah.
message. So, in response to that, I know that some in the New Age movement say, well, I'm glad that you've found
Yeah.
Jesus and that
Yeah.
that works for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that.
So what would you say to someone who says that? They say, I'm glad you found it, but I don't need Jesus.
Mhm. It's kind of funny because like a lot of the new age people will talk about like I am you and you are me kind of concept, like we're all one kind of interconnected being. And so I'd kind of play on that a little bit and I would be like, if we're one and the same and it's been good for me that I found Jesus, it might be good for you.
Yeah.
It might be good for you. Just give it a try, give it a chance. I mean, and a lot of it too is that for me personally, I was so deep in my deception that I really feel like I needed to be broken. I feel,
Mm,
and I pray that it's not the same for everybody. I hope that people don't have to become as broken as I was.
mm,
But I fear that for a lot of people in the new age, it is that case that you have to live in your deception for so long that you become so entirely broken. So I would probably tell them like, don't let yourself get completely broken
mm.
before you have to be saved. Yeah,
Wow, that's really incredible.
yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and and start to wrap the conversation up.
Yeah.
This has been, thank you so much
Yeah, thank
for
you.
sharing your story.
Thank you,
So
Isaiah.
this is really, really incredible. I
Mhm.
knew you before you knew Jesus,
Mhm.
and I've known you after you've known Jesus.
Mhm.
Totally different Olivia.
Yeah. Yes.
Totally different
Yeah.
Olivia, and that's been an incredible journey to see you go on. So
Mhm.
what do you think moving forward, this newfound faith in Jesus? You're looking at your life now.
Mhm.
You've seen the journey that you've been on. You've seen the death to life transition in your life.
Mhm.
What do you think now the next steps look for you
Mm.
in this relationship with Jesus?
Mm. Well, I am very set on continuing to grow in my faith, like working on, reading Bible study, going to church, building community with other Christians, really integrating Christ into every area of my life. I mean, I've noticed all my conversations end in talking about Jesus. It's my main priority. My main priority is my relationship with Jesus and focusing on that. And then moving forward, I'd really like to return back to school at one point and receive a degree in like Christian counseling, and just finding ways to minister to people as I grow stronger in my faith and I'm able to really truly bring people to Jesus. I think it's only been 2 months, so I have to humble my experience and say, there's a lot of work to be done. But also I really feel that there's intentions that the Lord has for me to shine that light for people, and I'm extremely excited about it. So just making chasing the Lord my number one priority for the rest of my life.
Yeah, wow,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you, Olivia, and
Thank
thank you
you.
guys for watching or listening. I'm Isaiah with the Y2B podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.